Well, now I want to turn back to Jack Yodel. Jack, I hope that's close, who owns Ipswich Hobbies, and he's going to do a build along of one of his kits of a section house. So, Jack, welcome.
We had an introductory presentation several weeks ago, and we're working on the Ipswich Hobbies section house kit in N, HO, and O scales. You can still order it at ipswichhobbies.com, 20% discount off that list price to those who are participating. And let's see, there's 3 boxes. O-scale trains. I had a nice review of the O-scale kit that was written by Bill Davis, who built the O-scale kit for that review. And obviously, before the glue, we want to read instructions, perhaps twice, inventory the parts, make sure they're all there. Review prototype photos. We're going to review a few of those photos in just a moment. And create a plan. Is it your intent to have a nice fresh building, or something that's ready to fall down? And you'll see different samples of this coming up. And beyond the box, you need to decide early on if you are going to be detailing the interior or lighting the structure. Interior details and lighting are not included with the kits, but it's helpful to have a sense of what the end game is for your particular build. This is the prototype, and this was what it looked like when I first photographed it, probably 10 years ago now, 10 years ago. And there were 2 of these in Ipswich, Massachusetts. The first one was East Ipswich is gone, and this was the one that remained at the time. I want to point out one thing here. You see one lifted board. This clapboard is coming apart a little bit. And a little side editorial of mine. We've all seen many wonderful modelers who like to have a lifted board effect. And you can see where in the prototype, one lifted clapboard goes a long way. Too often in modeling, when folks seem to want to make a point of having a decrepit building, they'll overdo the lifting of the clapboards. Same thing with shingles. A lot of times you'll see instead of a shingle here or there damaged or lifted up, some folks, in my opinion, just overdo it with lifting clapboards or lifting shingles. Here you can see the recess of the door that would slide to the right. The man door here is obviously just covered over with a sheet of plywood. I never saw actual windows in this building, nor photographs of them. This was boarded up in the probably a little storage loft, and there's a piece of plywood over the lower window. There's the same window on both sides. And another view, a little bit better view. I still could not figure out if the boards came all the way down and the interior floor was wood, or if there was a concrete slab under there somewhere. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So you pretty much have a choice. You can have a concrete floor or a scribe floor that's provided. I want to point out also this down here in the lower right, below the window on the side. We're guessing this is a Boston and Maine Railroad prototype. A B&M historian and I are both guessing that was a vent for a propane stove or some sort of a heater. Chances are the smoke jack that's up on the roof, probably there was probably a potbelly stove under there at one point, and eventually replaced by a propane heater. That's just a guess. And here I just wanted to point out the grunge, the different colors of stains or faded paints that you can use in a structure like this. Notice the green grunge and moss up on the roof. And you can see that the prototype was really a gray with white trim. But here you can see you can probably have every color of a stain that's on your workbench shelf, and put that, slather that all over this model. This is the Ipswich, East Ipswich section house that I mentioned a moment ago. The exact same structure, a little bit better condition, not a very good photograph, but you can see the shed addition that's in the back. It just 3 walls of slope roof that attaches to the rear end. And note here that the rolled roofing is vertical. And again, you can see the loft boarded up. And again, the vent down here. That's a better view of the prototype that I photographed. Okay, let's build. One thing that I learned from Martin Brickbeal when I toured his little workshop a number of years ago, he used to plate glass over blue shop towels. And I thought that was great, and that's what I use. That's my flat surface, a big piece of glass with blue towels under it. And so that was a nice tip. Paint or stain each of the side walls, prevents warping, and if you're going to light the structure, it'll keep light leakage to a minimum. Then add the door and window framing trim later on. So there's 3 quick, simple steps that we're going to go through over a period of 4 weeks and 15-minute segments. Safety first, always, of course. We start with a fresh number 11 blade in our X-Acto. I have a slit on top of this medicine container to keep my used blades, which I don't throw away, at least not until I fill that up. I use those blades to apply glue, and sometimes I use them as a paint applicator. I like the sharp point for fine detail work, and I use the reverse side as a scribing tool. In this particular build, the walls rest on top of the floor. So you're seeing the photograph on the bottom left. I marked the floor, marked the back wall. Feel free to, write on the inside of your parts. And I just had to draw a pencil line across the bottom, and you'll see that in some of the photographs on the right side. Just want to make sure that you don't bring your bracing all the way down to the ground, and then later find out you have to remove it and trim off a piece to slide the floor under. The fingernail test. You got some parts, namely the 2 right here on the left-hand side, bottom left. They're very similar in size, and there's no windows in the wall. When you have clapboard without a door, without a window, it is very easy to have that wall inserted upside down. So using a fingernail test on the back side will tell you which way the clapboards are going. So you want to make sure that they overlap in the proper direction. On the main photograph on the right, you can see in the bottom, those are the main parts. On the N scale at the bottom, HO in the middle, and the O scale version up top. The bracing is applied vertically. You can see on the left top, on that angled roof, it's really upside down when they're installed. But that's the back shed roof, those 2 pieces. And I do sometimes just put some along the top, give you an extra gluing surface for the roof. Mark the inside with light pencil, as you saw in the prior photograph. As I said, a lot of these things, it's hard to tell what the top is. So you don't want to get mixed up and confused in that. Stains. I've got all kinds of stains in bottles, as well as these basically what are furniture markers. Sometimes it's just an experiment with them. You'll note on the bottom two floors, the N scale and the HO to the right, those are just rectangular pieces. The O scale at the top is notched at each of the corners, and there's a notch here. The notch that the blue line is pointing to, that is where the wall would go right to the ground. The notch on the top left corner, that's where the man door would sit. And then in the large area to the right of that photograph, that's where the speeder or the rail car door would go. It would rest on top of that. The bottom two well, you can do it on all three actually. You'd have to do a little trimming on the O scale. While on the two N and HO scale floors, you could very easily just turn those over and paint and weather them a concrete color, put a few stains on the floor, and pretend you've got a concrete floor instead of a wooden floor. Nobody's ever seen the inside who's still alive of that building, so nobody can ever tell you you're wrong. This is my spray booth, the photograph on the right. That's an old chair that's in the backyard. I'm not going to have any interior detail on the smaller scales, the N and the HO. So I just did a rattle can spray of the interior side, the inside walls black. And I'm probably going to end up on this build having an open door on that section house. So I was able to look at and took it in New Hampshire, the inside of a speeder shed, and the walls are gray. So I said, okay, I spray painted gray on that one, where there'll be some visible interior. Stains rather can be simply a primer or undercoat, or it can be your final coat. I've done it both ways. I've just had stains on some of my buildings and they look great with some weathering over it. And here I've experimented with 3 different colors on these particular models. The N scale on the left is London Fog. In the center, in the right, I made a mistake. I didn't change one of the bottles out when I took the photographs, but it's a shadow gray stain that is on the HO scale building. It's a darker front wall in the top picture. And the bottom right is the O scale, and I have what's called the swamp rot. I don't know how Brian Bollinger comes up with these names, but anyway, it's called swamp rot. That's what that looks like on the O scale. I'll end up painting over this. Sand the fuzz off the strip wood before painting. That's a step that a lot of folks forget sometimes. I use a sanding pad, and I fold that pad and I pull all my strip wood through this before I paint or stain. And then I do the same process again after I paint or stain the strip wood. And it gets all that fuzz off, or most of it off. Keep all your squares and your rulers handy. Like in any modeling, whether it's plastic or wood or scratch building, whatever you do, you need to make sure that you're square in all corners and you get a reasonably tight fit as best you can on some of these parts. This is what the 3 kits look like: N, HO, and O scale on the right. These are the inside of the walls, the interiors of the walls, where you can see that on the N scale, there's some framing, which is probably overscale for the small windows that's on top. On the HO and O scale versions, there are separate parts that are adhesive backed that go on to those windows. And one thing that you'll see on the vertical pieces, on the corner trim pieces, they butt up against the man door and the speeder door, the wider door, so that you have 2 pieces of strip wood on each side of that front wall. And this is what the other side, the outside of the walls look like. NHO. You can see the different color stains. And that is where we are through this first segment. We got through just cutting the strip wood, doing the bracing, putting the trims in the windows and doors. And next week's short segment, we're going to be installing windows and doors and start some of the roof work.
Jack, it was awfully nice of you to do this. I really do appreciate it. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful model, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Well, it does come out very nicely. You can see this is the O-scale version. It does make for a great kit.
Yep.
And virtually every layout can use one or two.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jack.
Thank you, Jim.